SiliconANGLE Media presents theCUBE, covering Alibaba Cloud's annual conference. Brought to you by Intel. Now here's John Furrier.
Hello everyone, I'm John Furrier, the co-founder of SiliconANGLE, Wikibon, and theCUBE. We are here for exclusive CUBE conversations at the Alibaba Cloud Conference here in Hangzhou, China. We're here with Dr. Wang, who's the chairman of the Alibaba Group Technology Committee, as well as the founder of Alibaba Cloud, here in the new Museum of Inspiration at the event. Thanks for spending the time with me.
Oh, thank you for coming.
So before we talk about Alibaba Cloud and all the goodness going on here at the conference, talk about this Museum of Inspiration. It is new, and it has kind of a display theme. You've kind of walked through time.
Yeah.
What was the motivation and the inspiration for the museum?
Yeah, I think the key word for the Museum of Inspiration is really on the inspiration instead of the museum, okay? So I would say that that's true, really, the origin thinking about that. The first thing is really about, when people take a lot of things for granted, okay? And so one of the goals for this museum, it just show the people they probably see every day. But just let them guess, wow, okay, that's different from what I thought, okay? So I think a lot of people take for granted, but it's really the great invention, a great, human contribution to the whole society. So I think this one thing is really about let people understand why we got here today. So that's the first thing. The other thing is really about, science and technology. So when people talking about science and technology, people often will say, okay, when we can combine science and technology or that. But I don't think that's the right way to describe the relationship between science and technology. I would say science and technology is really the two sides of the coin, okay? So I really want to let people to see two sides instead of mix it together and got one thing, okay? So that's two things that's parallel, just like 0 and 1. There are two things, okay? When they put together in a computer, amazing things happen, okay? So if you mix the 0 and 1 as like half something, then the word is just not that fun, okay? So I really want to make sure it's the Museum of Science and Art instead of the mixture of science and the arts, okay? So that's the one thing. The other thing is really about the inspiration of future, Most of the museum is really about the past, and to show how we have in the past, and with less on the inspiration to help people to think about the future. So this museum is really, when we think about everything over here, so we did talk about the past, but we want to make sure people think about the future. So that's the whole idea about the
And the
museum.
computer industry is fairly young if you go back to modern computing.
Yeah.
But you kind of have a take here about how technology really is embedded in life.
Yeah.
Talk more about that impact, because that seems to translate to the conference here at Alibaba, that technology isn't just about the speeds and the feeds, it's about the integration into life.
Yeah, and I think that from this museum you can see that actually I trace back the origin of all the technology. So when people talking about the computer technology, I really want to talk about the computing technology, and then can trace back, okay, see that actually the human is the first, computing device, and just our mother nature, created, for us, okay. So if you look at the same things different, you can really see the origin of that. So I think in this museum we talk about two really original things. The first is about the nature origin of the internet. So when talking about internet, people are talking about our current technology infrastructure of internet. So when we look at the human history, so I always said when people walk, you create the internet for Earth, okay. So you can see that a lot of things can trace back. And then with this kind of trace back, you can help us to think about what's going to happen next. So the original idea is actually very important, if you're thinking about technology, yeah.
Talk about the story of Alibaba Cloud. I mean, that is not I mean, it's new. Amazon's had it for around early 2000s.
Yeah.
But you guys came right after Amazon, 2009.
Yeah.
Still young
Yeah.
and growing.
Yeah.
How does the Alibaba Cloud take the culture of this inspiration? What are some of the design principles of the Alibaba Cloud?
Yeah, actually, I would say the Alibaba Cloud is different from the Amazon Cloud. In a sense, we have different vision about the future. Okay, and unfortunately, we are put on the same umbrella called cloud computing by media. Okay, I would say that. So we are different in a sense. When the Amazon, actually, I show great respect to Amazon. Okay, but when Amazon started cloud computing, we are really talking about the utility. They're talking about how to cut the cost down. Okay, so basically, they start with the low cost of IT infrastructure. That's what I understand. Okay, well, but when I started Alibaba Cloud, we know that actually cost is important for sure, but we know that actually the computing power is more important than the cost. If you're thinking about the big data era, okay. So we started with thinking with it's the data-centric cloud computing. When you look at our first brochure, and we put word that over there. That's almost 9 years ago. So we call it data-centric cloud computing instead of the IT-centric cloud computing. So this actually is not just an idea difference. It's actually eventually influenced of the underlying technology infrastructure. So our whole underlying technology infrastructure is designed for the data instead of just for the IT deployment. Yeah.
So Jack Ma was talking about this industrial revolution, this digital transformation.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is you guys have that same art and scientist kind of dynamic artists and science coming together. Reminds me of the Steve Jobs technology, liberal arts thinking that spawned new creativity.
Yeah.
Certainly the iPhone is a great example of that as one of the many things. But now the new generation is coming together. You have a big artist focus here at the event, music festival, not just technology.
Yeah.
How is that part of the focus at the event here, and what does that mean for new developers?
Okay, I think it's really the crossing behind that. If you're thinking about like technology and our e-commerce, what's really the one thing behind that is really change the way of people's life. Okay, and so computing in that sense, computing is not just technology. It's really something that changes the way of the life of every people. Okay. I think the e-commerce changed the way of life of other people. In that sense, they are the same. Okay. So if you look at the people's life, as I said, they won't live just on technology. They won't just live on the arts. Okay. They need a life. Okay. Life means everything. So by nature, we have to make sure as consumers they need something that more than just one thing. So I think we are very lucky. We understand that. And if you're thinking about the young people, and I want to give you a few numbers about this conference about young people. And you know that in China we have the very specific word talking about the young people a couple of years ago. We call the 80后. It basically means the generation born after 80s. Okay. And then when people talking about the 90后, that basically means people born after 90s. Okay. And then when people talking about the 00后, it's basically people talking about people born after 2000. Okay. And I think that most of the visitors for this conference are 00后, 90后, and 80后. So this are all young people.
The digital culture.
It's a digital culture, and I would rather use my own word in the book. I would say instead of digital from a digital generation is already an old generation. I would say, and I would like that to call it online generation. They do everything online, and even the last generation do a lot of things digital because digital is everywhere. But I want to emphasize it's an online generation. They do everything online. Yeah.
Dr. Wang, talk about data. You mentioned that's the key ingredient, it's the fuel for innovation, and that's impacting the City Brain project that you guys are doing. Talk about the City Brain and the role of data and how that's impacting the societal users out there. Certainly here in China, the traffic is crowded, but this is just an example of what else is out there.
Okay, so City Brain actually again, it means different things based on the perspective. So I think one thing probably is important is about the data. And this is the first time actually, I think, instead of using the big data, it's better to using what I call the data resource. It's a better word than the big data, okay? So I think the one fundamental thinking for the city brain is human finally realized actually the data resource is the most precious resource for the city instead of land and water supply. And because we already know that the land is limited, the water supply is limited, okay. So this is very important, and we doesn't view data as not essential thing. It's just not part of your IT system, okay. Yeah. But we finally realize actually data is part of the city instead of part of your city IT system. So this is, I think it's not the leapfrog thinking for that, for me, at least for me. And when it got to that, and you realize actually today, all the existing IT system cannot actually really embrace the data. So IT system is just support people do the work they used to do, okay. And then you realize that, okay, we need an infrastructure to really make the value from the data. Just like we have a water supply system for the city, then you can use the reservoir, okay. Otherwise, the reservoir is useful for the city. So I think city brain, just like a water supply system for the data, and so the city eventually can consume that. And so we start thinking about, okay, it's a new infrastructure for the city, just like water supply system, just like a power grid, just like underway system. That's how we think about it. Okay, this is the first thing. The reason we got to the traffic system is this is the problem every city has around the world. Okay, and from my yesterday's presentation, I just joked about we built 2 roads for the city. Okay, just too many, and I think a lot of people realize that's why Boston had the project. They want to get all the road on the surface, okay, on the surface, but it's still road, okay. It's still expensive. You know how much money they spend just move all the road.
The big dig, I remember that was the big dig.
Yeah, that's a big dig. Okay, I don't think that's good for the transportation system, but I don't think that's a sustainable way for the growth of the city.
Yeah.
I think probably most of the city don't have the money to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So what the data city will want to do, whether we can take the resource of data and we can optimize every aspect of the city so we can use less resource to support the city growth. Okay. So when we start with the traffic, it's just make sure. So you know that when we use the data to optimize the traffic lights, the idea behind that actually we use the data to optimize the time, how to distribute the time. It's not just the lights, okay.
Yeah.
And then if you're thinking about, when we show the eventually, okay, if you have enough data, then we can have less road in the city, but still got the same,
So the Internet of Things is the hottest trend. Obviously, machine learning and artificial intelligence are part of that, and the cloud powers this new edge of the network, and the data has to flow.
Yeah.
So the question that a lot of technologists who are architecting these solutions ask is, how do you make the data go at very low latency? And that takes compute power. That takes a lot of technology.
Yeah.
How does Alibaba Cloud think about the architecture? Also, you have strategic partners like Intel, obviously, with a lot of compute power, but you got to think differently around making the data move.
Yeah.
If it's like water, it needs to flow.
Yeah.
So real time is really important. With self-driving cars, real time is down to the millisecond, nanosecond. So how do you think about that as a technologist?
Oh, I think if it goes back to Internet of Things, I think it's still the Internet. So I would say eventually, if you're thinking about the word cloud computing and people use edge computing and people talking about Internet of Things, for me it's just the computing on the Internet. So cloud computing is a computing on the Internet, and edge computing is computing on the Internet. Even the IoT is a computing on the Internet. So if you're talking about the data, I think eventually is really about the data on the Internet. So it's not the data on the sensor, it's not data on the cloud, so basically data on the Internet. So I would expect that eventually the Internet infrastructure will be improved significantly. So it's not improved the cloud, it's not improved like edge computing, or it's improvement of the IoT, but it's really
Together.
about,
They gotta
it's a
work
together
together.
force.
So Intel, I was covering them at Mobile World Congress earlier in the year, and obviously 5G, you need the mobile overlay. That's super important. But you also have the end-to-end inside the cloud. So obviously Intel's a strategic partner. Can you talk about the relationship you have with Intel, and also your philosophy, technically speaking, with the ecosystem? Because it's not just Intel, it's everybody now. So there's a lot of people here at this event, American companies as well as international companies, who are now going to be part of your ecosystem.
Yeah, actually, we certainly have a very good relation with the Intel, and I think we share in some sense, the same vision of that. I think that the number one thing is really about people realize about how important the computing, I would say. So for me, the Intel is not that a chipset company. Okay, the Intel is really the provider of computing power. Okay. That's what I understand, and we can expect eventually the whole ecosystem is really about who is going to provide the computing power, and who is going to provide the infrastructure to make the data flow okay, instead of just an equipment supply, because eventually the needs for the computing and the needs for the data will be the challenge for every company, including the Alibaba Cloud. We are not. We're not immune for this challenge, okay, but we will feel the same challenge. So what we want to do is really make sure that with all these partners provide enough computing that for the next 10 or 20 years, and want to make sure that enough data flow for the next 10 of years. So in that sense, it's not a traditional ecosystem as like you do this and you do that. It's basically how we can work together to really make sure we have the challenge for the data and the computing in the next 10 years.
Yesterday we covered the news that you guys announced $15 billion in R&D over the next 3 years, which is a lot of money. And it also has a very international and global view. Academics with younger folks. Alibaba Cloud is going to be a part of that, I'm assuming. I'd love to get your thoughts on how you see that intersecting. But the question for you is, the cloud world today is moving at very, very fast speed. We're seeing Amazon, for instance, has been the best in terms of new announcements every year. I mean, not one or two, like a ton of announcements, a lot. How are you guys going to continue to keep the pace, to move faster? Because the City Brain is a great project, but it's going to have more evolution. It's going to move fast. How are you guys keeping up the pace?
I think the only way, that's not just for next 10 years. Actually, when I started Alibaba Cloud, actually, we take the same philosophy. Actually, the user moves very fast than ours, okay? And if you look at the users in China, and they move very fast, probably than anywhere else around the world, okay? And if you use the City Brain project, I would say City project is basically tell the people, we need the computing power more than any other task, okay? And so you really can see that, okay? People want you. So if you can satisfy their demand, and somebody else is going to do that, okay? So it's not something we want to move fast, but
you have to move fast.
You have to move faster. So that's why that actually, but China is special. So I always say China is not just a place for the market. China is the place that pushes you to move fast, okay? That's probably more important than it's market side, okay?
You mentioned data technology and information technology kind of transferring to a new world. Software is also a big part of it. Software, you got the compute, obviously with Intel and the relationships you have, but software is growing exponentially, certainly in open source. We see the Cloud Native Foundation here, the proper Linux Foundation. Open source is going to grow exponentially. More code will be shipping. But you have more data growing exponentially. So software is eating the world, but data is eating software. So that means software is greater than data is greater than software. If you look at it that way, that's super important. As the new architects, you and I were just talking about how we've been in the industry for a while. You certainly have an amazing career from Microsoft, now at Alibaba. A new generation of architects and developers are going to create new innovations around this dynamic of data. What's your advice, and how do you view that? If you were 21 years old again right now, and you were going to jump into studies in academic and or field.
Okay.
It's a whole new world.
Yeah, I think that for two suggestions, may not necessarily for the young generation, but I would say it's just a suggestion for the young generation to push that happen. Okay. The first thing, that you mentioned about the data eats software, but I would put this in a different perspective. I would say for the last generation, for the last 2 or 3 generations, I would say the computer era, we are really talking about computer plus software, okay? That's pretty much everything. But for this generation, I would say, okay, we are talking about the computing plus the data. So that box is not important, but the computing power is more important. But for the computer era, the box is important.
Yeah.
But people
there's no box. It's the world.
That's
it's
the
cloud.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one thing. Okay. And but the implication for this is, I would like young generation push is, then we need the new infrastructure. Think about the Bill has a great vision that have the computer in every home. Okay. That's infrastructure.
Yeah.
But today, when you are in the computing plus the data era, the infrastructure not there. Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the vision for the Alibaba Cloud is make sure that we have this infrastructure for the next 10 or 20 years, so the young generation can take advantage of that and to do their innovation and invention. Okay, just like computer in every.
And that's very important. I think that also speaks to businesses, how enterprises. I mean, I remember my first startup, I had to buy all this equipment and put it into the telephone closet.
Yeah.
Now, startups and small businesses don't need IT departments.
Yeah.
This has been a big growth area, certainly for Alibaba Cloud. But now all businesses might have a small closet, not a big data center.
Yeah.
So this is going to change the nature of business.
Yeah.
So work and play are coming together.
Yeah.
This speaks to the Museum of Inspiration theme here, where you can have work and play kind of integrate, but yet still be separate in an analog digital world.
Yeah.
What's your vision on this new dimension of everything doesn't have to be just digital? You can have an analog life and mix it with digital. Yeah,
actually, I always said, okay, it's not. The world never would have just one side, always have two sides. And the difference is which side is important at a particular time, okay? Yeah. So just like when people talk about digital and analog, the analog will exist forever. It's hard for you to kill, okay? The question is whether you can find the most beauty from the digital, at the same time you can find the most beauty part of the analog. And I would say that the people, just like, when talking about software, people still love the hardware. And people still love the touch. They still love to make sure it looks good, okay? Whether it works, versus it works good, okay? So I would say we want to make sure people live in a world that with the two sides, instead of just giving them one side of the world. Yeah.
You mentioned people still love hardware. I always say there's always a car drives, but there's still an engine, and people like to understand the engine. There's a maker culture in the United States that's been growing over the past 2 decades, and now even more accelerated is the maker culture because of the edge and how technology has become part of the fabric of life. How do you see that maker culture being enabled by more cloud services? Because anyone can make a skateboard or a motorcycle or a computer or a device now, and powering that with the cloud is an opportunity. How do you view that?
And I would say that eventually, if we have the broad definition of a cloud, I would say eventually everything the maker makes will be part of the cloud. So when talking about cloud, we're really talking about internet. So every hardware, every piece of hardware will be part of the internet. So I would say, if you look at the evolution of the internet it's just the backbone at the very beginning. I think the first revolution the internet made is really make sure that every piece of software is a part of the internet. That's how we got the World Wide Web, okay? And I would say, when talking about the make culture, I would say eventually every piece of hardware will be part of the internet. So internet won't be complete without the hardware. So that's what that's why in that sense, the cloud is really the essential part of that. Yeah.
There's some really interesting things happening here in China that I'm excited about. One of them is the nature of the user base and how close you guys are to that. In the U.S., a similar scale, but it's kind of spread out a bunch of other cloud providers. But the interesting phenomenon, as data grows exponentially and as software grows exponentially in open source, things are becoming more decentralized. So without talking about the whole initial coin offerings, I know China has banned it and Russia's going to ban it, other countries are putting a clamp down on cryptocurrency. Putting that aside, there's still blockchain as a potential disruptive enabler. You're seeing decentralization becoming new architecture dynamic because you have to support the growth of these devices at the edge. So distributed computing's been around for a while, but now a decentralized architecture dynamic exists. How do you steer that technology direction?
You have to separate from the distributed architecture versus it's a physical location. So I would say I like the blockchain, the idea very much, and I think eventually it would be part of the internet. It's not just something sit on top of the internet. It would be very fundamental, just like TCP/IP. It's at this low level, okay. So it would be the part of the internet instead of sit top of the internet. So eventually, internet in that sense, internet would be very distributed, okay. But by saying that, it's not saying there's no data center exists, okay. You still need, even though physically it's in one place, but
it's almost decentralized, not 100%.
Yeah. So obviously that would be different. So without the internet, without like new software, that basically just like PC. PC is really on a single box and with all the software in a box, okay. But with this distributed architecture, now we could have a data center, but everything actually is distributed. You still cannot trace that, okay. So if you cannot, you put like a million servers in the data center, it's actually distributed over this 1 million servers, okay. So in that sense, it's completely distributed.
And serverless too is a big trend where, if you talk about the edge of the network, you got to move compute to the data sometimes, or have compute on the edge. So this is going to be continued growth. You see that as well, right?
Yes, and but I still think if you use the silicon as a measure for this computing power, okay, I would say definitely you can see there's more silicons on the edge, but I would say when we put one silicon on the edge, you probably have to put 100 silicon on the cloud. So it's still kind of
it's a relationship.
It's a relationship. Just like our body is very important, but the brain consumes the most oxygen. Okay, that's the.
It's important what's in the cloud. Then you got to have the compute and got those ratios, and it depends on the architecture.
Yes.
Final question for you is, as the folks in Silicon Valley where we're based in Palo Alto want to know, is Alibaba, what it means to them. If you have a chance to say a few things about what Alibaba Cloud is to America, what would you like to say?
Oh, I would say that actually they would just put the cloud computing aside. Just look at what really means behind that. I think the cloud, we do have an own understanding what cloud computing really means, okay. And at the very beginning, actually, I want to call the company, called cloud computing company. I would like to call it a general computing company. It's really reflect, what thinking in China. So again, my comments is not just view China as the market to sell your product, and view China as the place to inspire having a new product.
And it's a global world now. The world is flat.
Yes, just like the United States, it's not just it's not a place inspired the other people around the world to get to have a new idea. Okay, I think the people in China just love new things. Okay, they love trying new things. So it's really can short your cycle of your innovation.
And it's a global collaboration. It's interesting that phenomenon is going to continue. You've done amazing work here. Congratulations on the Museum of Inspiration and the projects you're working on. Personal question for you. What are you excited about now? I mean, we kind of joke about how old we are now, but the young people certainly have a great future ahead of them.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of experience, and you're steering Alibaba's technology committee across the group, as well as the cloud, being the founder of the cloud.
Yeah.
What are you excited about right now, technically speaking? What's the big, or just impact? What's the wave? What's the big wave that you like?
I think it's very exciting in a couple of things. Okay, three things I would say. The first is really about just look at technology itself. And just like what I described in my book, it's really, really exciting in your life if you can see the internet plus the computing and plus data could sit together. Okay. Yeah. Just like you have this engine, you have the airplane, a couple of things sit together in the one area. This is a very, very exciting area. So this is not just about an era, a technology era. It's an era that all things happen at the same time. So that's very exciting. That's one thing. Okay. The second thing is really about the city around over here, and I think the Alibaba, Hangzhou is just a very special for Alibaba, but I think it's special for the profits or for the other company as well. So this place is a very special, and to just give you an idea where you are. Okay, this area has the most networked river in the past. Okay, if you look at the map, it's like internet. Okay, so I would say that all the people over here, their mindset is just an internet mindset. Even goes back 100, 200 years ago, because the river is the only way for them to travel, for the communication.
That's the data back then.
That's what they say. Yeah. So if you look at the map, so this is very exciting.
Yeah.
The other thing is about the Alibaba. For me, the Alibaba. Alibaba. We have a very broad business. Okay, you can feel that. But from technology point of view, that basically means it's the place you can touch every aspect of technology. So it's very instead of just have a very slight, very.
You have a great surface area, aperture to look at impact of life.
Yeah. So you're thinking about the three things together, and it's hard to say. Okay, you better to get excited. Okay,
it's a great time to be in technology, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, entertainment, e-commerce, web services.
So for me, when I work on the City Brain project, it's just the beginning of machine learning. So a lot of people, they are fighting for when people talking about speech recognition, they are fighting for the last 1 meter for the speech recognition. But if talking about City Brain, it's the world, the most big AI project. Yeah. It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
So we just start with the 1%.
It must be a lot of fun. I mean, you got a lot of data to work with. You have real life integration. It's super exciting.
Yes.
When are we going to see you in Silicon Valley?
I pay a regular visit to Silicon Valley 2 or 3 times every year, and we probably see sometime early next year.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming to the conference and coming to the museum.
Thank you very much for your great inspiration.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.